How many times have you thought, my child is in a sleep regression? I know this thought very well, and I also hear this all the time in my practice, that anytime our child is not sleeping well, we label it as a regression. And we think to ourselves, that's it, my child's in a regression. Any little thing that comes up becomes a regression. But what is a regression? And when do we actually experience a sleep regression? And how do we differentiate between my child's overtired, or I had a false start having him fall asleep, or my child's in pain, or my child's actually in a regression, or maybe my child's just in the learning process of sleep? In this episode, we're going to dive into what is a sleep regression and what it actually looks like so that you can show up as that calm anchor to facilitate your child back to good sleep. So the first time that I hear parents tell me that their child is in a regression is actually during the sleep learning process. We start out with a plan, we dive into the plan, we start seeing immediate success because that's what happens. Once we allow the child to sleep, things just naturally move in the right direction. And so we get super excited. It feels like, okay, it's happening. My child's learning how to sleep. Yay, we're doing this. And then all of a sudden, we have a little bit of a rough night. And then we feel like, oi, my child's in a sleep regression. But actually, we are not in a sleep regression until we have actually learned how to sleep. Think about what is the situation that you're experiencing. Because if you are in a learning process, right? Like when I think learning process, I think this. And for those of you listening to me on Spotify, you're not seeing what I'm doing with my hands, but I'm actually making like a wave type hand movement, which means learning is not linear. We actually go through ups and downs when we're learning how to sleep. And of course, through the learning process, we become more fluent at it and our sleep solidifies and we sleep better and we have less disrupted sleep. But sleep is still what I call an infinite game. Sleep will still go up and down, depending on what's going on for us, depending on how we're feeling, depending on what it is we experience during the day. And just the nature of learning means it's not going to be linear. We're not going to have perfect nights every single night once we've had a good night. So wrapping our head around that as parents and as caregivers means that I can show up with kind of a little bit of a flexibility around the fact that my child is not going to be this, from step 1 to step 2 to step 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's not necessarily the way the learning process goes. And that does not mean that your child is in a regression. It just means that your child is learning. We're going to have better nights, and then we're going to have an off night, and then we're going to have better nights again, and that's okay, and that's to be expected, and you can embrace that. That actual embracing relays to your child a feeling of confidence. And when they experience you as confident, when they themselves are a little bit flustered because they're not having the perfect night's sleep, that helps them feel calm and safe. So you have a lot of influence in the way that you show up. Now let's talk about, when does a sleep regression show up? Because we understand that the night is made up of different types of sleep. We have the first third of the night is deep sleep. The second third of the night is light sleep, and those sleep cycles shorten as the night progresses. And the third third of the night is REM sleep, which is a very, very choppy type of sleep with many, many wake-ups. So what does that even mean, and why does it even matter? It matters because regressions show up towards the end of the night. So in the previous episode, where we talked about pain, we talked about the fact that pain shows up at the beginning of the night during deep sleep, where sleep is the deepest. And so the body's experiencing pain and it's disrupting my deep sleep, and sometimes not even enough to fully wake me, but I just kind of cry in my sleep and fall back asleep, and then cry in my sleep and fall back asleep until I have a big wake up. That is pain. Here we're talking about the last part of the night, where we are in REM sleep. And when we're in REM sleep, those sleep cycles are super short. Some REM sleep cycles are just 10 minutes. And so there are many wake-ups during the third third of the night. And when we experience a regression, it's going to creep in from the end of the night. So everything's going well with sleep. My child's sleeping through the night. It's been weeks like this. And then all of a sudden, my child's waking up at 5:30. And I'm like, well, it's 5:30, it must be almost morning. And before you know it, that 5:30 becomes 5 o'clock. And then that 5 o'clock becomes 4:45. And the 4:45 becomes 4:15. That is typical of a regression. Regressions creep in very subtly, sneaky, I would say, where you can't quite tell that it's coming because it just feels like your child got up a little bit earlier. Instead of getting your child back to sleep because you're thinking, well, it's almost morning. And by the way, there's no such thing as almost morning. That term, almost morning, is a self-sabotage because when you think almost morning, you decide to say good morning earlier than when you actually would like to. And the body recognizes morning as a time to get up. So if you're exposing your child to bright lights and food and you're just starting the day earlier than you need to be, you are actually exacerbating the regression. We are so tired. We feel like, well, it's already 5 o'clock. So I'm just going to feed my child and get them back to sleep because I know they're not really ready to get up. And it's 5 o'clock and I don't want them up at that hour because it's just going to totally make a mess out of their whole morning. So I'm going to feed them and put them back asleep. That works for a while. So it kind of tricks us to thinking that that might be the Band-Aid that we're looking for. But feeding back to sleep or co-sleeping even might be, well, at 5 o'clock, I'm not ready to get up yet and neither is my child. So I'm just going to bring them into my bed. And then at that point, we're going to keep sleeping until it's actually time to get up. And for a day or two, you feel like, that was a good call. It actually allowed us to sleep until 7. And then we started off on a full tank, which is what we all want. But we don't recognize that we are exacerbating a regression. Because once we bring in an association or a dependency or a sleep crutch, then we fall prey to those dependencies. And those dependencies always create a regression. We don't get something for nothing. And my dad actually used to say to me, with his funny Israeli accent, he used to say, Dorit, if it's too good to be true, it's not. And so I would like to say that to you. If it's too good to be true, that you're just going to co-sleep with your child at 5 a.m. and then that's going to save the rest of your night, it's not true. It's true for now until it's not going to be true anymore. And then you're going to be stuck with a child who's waking up earlier and earlier and earlier every night. So notice what we were saying. The regression creeps into the night, kind of sneaky, until all of a sudden you're back with wake-ups that are super in the middle of the night, like 12 o'clock and 3 o'clock, and then 5 o'clock your child won't go back to sleep. That's a regression. That's a full-blown regression. So notice, we talked about pain, and we said pain comes at the beginning of the night. And now we're talking about a sleep regression that usually creeps in from the end of the night. So when you as a parent are experiencing a wake-up, you want to actually not just get up and kind of be on autopilot. You want to think to yourself, what time is it? And I always slept with a clock right over my head. I mean, in front of my face, I should say. Because the minute my kids would wake up, I would look at the clock and I would be like, what time is it? And once I would see the time, because I'm disoriented in my sleep, right? That's what we are. We're disoriented when we wake up at night. We don't know what time it is. We have no idea what's going on. Being able to see the clock oriented me. I was like, oh, it's only 11 o'clock at night. Or I'd be like, ooh, it's 4 a.m. And that helps you understand how you want to show up. Because if it's 4 a.m., your child's most likely just in need of falling back asleep and not necessarily in massive pain. If your child wakes up and it's earlier, as we said, that might be a different story. And if you haven't checked out the episode on pain, you definitely want to do that. It's going to strengthen your stance in how you want to show up in the middle of the night when your child wakes. We want to have information. Information creates confidence in our parenting, especially at night when we can otherwise be thrown for a loop. We don't know what time it is. We don't understand what we're looking at. It's just another crying bout. And so we make up all kinds of narratives in our mind about why our child is waking, hoping that we got it right this time. But what if we didn't use chance? What if we used information? What if we empowered ourselves by learning? And then through the learning, we actually can show up with confidence for our children, understanding and recognizing what's actually happening and what actually needs to happen for our child to be able to, or for us to be able to preserve our child's good night's sleep. Now we know what a regression looks like. And so the question becomes, so what is it that I need to do in order to get my child to get out of this regression? How can I facilitate good sleep again? And here we want to first and foremost pick a way that we want to respond. So how do I want to show up when my child wakes up? Now that I know they're not in pain, now that I know that something horrible is not happening to them, what is it that I want to do in order to help my child or encourage my child to fall back asleep? So I will pick a way of showing up, and you will pick the way that feels right for you. So some parents feel very comfortable doing time check-ins. Other parents feel more comfortable standing next to their child and being very actively hands-on in real time. Whatever you pick is fine. That's not what's going to make the difference. It's the consistency, it's the confidence, it's the showing up again and again and again without getting confused or getting sucked into your child's big emotions that's going to help you carry them through this. Hopefully now you feel confident in being able to differentiate between my child's waking up because of pain and my child's actually in a sleep regression, or maybe my child's just learning how to sleep, and so I have no big expectations that everything needs to be linear. And if you still feel hesitant, I invite you to join me. I'm hosting the next challenge soon. You can check down below for the dates. Just like pain came up in one challenge and we troubleshooted in real time, regressions came up in the other challenge. There is just a wealth of information that you can bring to me that I will help you troubleshoot so that you can have clarity. I hope to see you there. I appreciate your time, and I thank you for being with me.